No, yeah, you're almost there.
Like letting them choose their own lease.
Yeah, exactly. Let them choose what they want to do. So you can tell me, remember, you should have it written down. What is the source of value for data policy?
Autonomy.
So what does that mean? What kind of things does that involve?
Wasn't it like the ability to make our own choices?
Yeah, exactly. So what does that have familiar with treating someone as an end in themselves?
We have choice.
Almost.
So I think this is sort of a complicated question. What it means to be an end in yourself. So let's say it's pretty hot outside, and you go out and you want to get an ice cream cone. What do you call getting that ice cream cone an end in itself?
You achieve a goal that you set up.
So you achieved a goal. So an end was achieved. Was it an end in itself?
Yes, because you set it up, didn't you? Like you decided that that was the goal that you wanted to achieve.
You did. That's not quite what it means to be an end in itself. So why do we want this ice cream? Because it's hot outside. So it's not really that we want an ice cream cone. Instead, we want to cool down. So there's some external reason why we want this ice cream cone. So it's not that the ice cream cone itself is intrinsically valuable. That we want ice cream because ice cream is good. We want ice cream because it does something else. So, with that in mind, if we want to say, like if I pull Patrick out of the way, a runaway dump truck, and I save his life, putting him out of the way because he's not on the right side. Why might we say saving Patrick is an end in itself? Or would we say that in the first place? Yeah.
Because you weren't saving Patrick to achieve something else, you're saving Patrick because you didn't want Patrick to die.
Yeah, it's not like Patrick owed me $5 and I really wanted to get my $5 from him because we've done a good deal. It was because Patrick's life is intrinsically valuable, which makes him an end in himself. As in, it's an end we can achieve, and it's not because it's good for other things, it's because it is the source of value. Patrick's rational will and his ability to make decisions makes him intrinsically valuable.
So who can tell me why getting ice cream on a hot day isn't an end in itself? How about what's your name?
Destiny.
Destiny. Why is getting ice cream on a hot day not an end in itself?
Because it has to go off.
Yeah, exactly. There's something else that you're trying to achieve by doing. Good. So why is saving me from getting run over by a dump truck an end in itself? What's your name right here in the grade school? Why is Graham saving me from getting killed by a dump truck an end in itself?
Because there's nothing you're trying to achieve by
Well, you're trying to achieve saving my life.
nothing. Saving your life is the goal. There's no goal beyond.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that phrase. There's no goal beyond saving his life. Whereas if I try to get an ice cream cone, there's a goal beyond that. And trying to cool down, there's a goal beyond that. Like trying to make myself happy, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's.
Oh, wait, good question.
But by saving him, won't you make yourself happy?
Right. So there could be other consequences of the action. So, yes, that's a good question. So it's somewhat inaccurate to talk about me just saving Patrick's life. Because really what the data analyst cares about is A, the action that we're taking, the means, and why we're taking the action. The intent behind the action. So, right?
Okay, so you ain't happy, it's just like the consequence when you actually do the action. It's not what you wanted.
Yeah, so can someone, that's a good way to phrase it. So can someone say what a possible intent I could have in saving Patrick's life that would make it That would mean that I am not treating Patrick as an end in himself. Someone who has.
If you don't raise your hand, we're just going to call
What about you with the white laptop and the blue and white stripes?
What's your name, by the way?
Ashley.
Ashley.
So what would a possible intent that I could have in saving Patrick's life be such that I am not treating him as an end in himself?
So like if there was something beyond that.
Right, let me give you an example.
Okay. Well, if you're trying to save his life because he meant something to you.
Like I would just be sort of sad if Patrick died, no, rather than not die. Yeah, in that case, Patrick would be a means to the end of my own happiness. And I'd be treating him as a mere means. Now, can someone give me an example of what an intent could be if I was treating him as an end in himself?
You're saving him because he has human life.
Yeah. Oh my god, here's an innocent person, Patrick Grant, that he saved him from this wrong way.
Yeah, I like Shane's answer because it says that, you know, he's not, Grant isn't saving me because he wants to be happy or because I owe him $5 or because, you know, I don't know, any other number of reasons. He's saving me because I have human life. I'm an end in myself.
Alright, so the phrase an end in, people are ends in themselves. You can't treat people merely as a means. You have to respect human rights. Those are all oftentimes ways people would phrase deontological criteria. What they like to respect people as ends. So I'm going to talk briefly about how it might be beneficial to use this sort of formulation. So in utilitarianism, remember we had examples from before. We were talking from the first lecture about how we could have a standard of like minimizing suffering, and how that was beneficial because then we could like compare different things. Deontology is really distinct from utilitarianism in that it doesn't compare. And I've heard like, I guess like for the example in the when we're deciding whether Patrick wants to shoot me in the face. He's not comparing, well, if I shoot him in the face, I kill him, and if I don't shoot him in the face, all the other people die. He's just like, well, if I take this action, shoot him in the face, I hurt an innocent person, that's wrong, I can't do it. So I should just step back and do nothing. So, playing on that a little bit, why might it be beneficial for, let's say, the negative on this topic to run a deontological standard? Does anyone have any idea? Yeah.
Because responding with deadly force, killing someone, therefore taking away their human.
But if you do nothing, there's still going to be violations, right? So, what would the deontologist say to that?
They aren't taking away their human.
Yeah. Yeah, that the victim is not harming anyone else if they just stop and do nothing, even though there's some violence that still occurs. Because the victim is doing nothing, their action is still going to be permissible, but if they try and kill someone, then that's bad. So, so if you have a utilitarian standard that was like minimizing suffering on the negative, and you're like, well, if you kill the abuser, then that's suffering. Affirmatives would probably get and say, well, domestic violence is also suffering, that's also really bad, and you have to weigh those harms against each other. But if the standard was deontological, the affirmative, I mean, they could say that, but they'd just be wasting their time. Because the deontologists just wouldn't care that was happening because you can never kill people. It would be the deontological position.
So who can tell me why it might be strategic to have a deontological standard on the negative rather than a utilitarian one? Yeah, Shane, one time.
Because you don't have to argue about like the consequences that action is going to have.
Why is that strategic?
Because that's what the affirmative side is going to try to do, because that would be like a reason to affirm the resolution, like all the consequences of like not using deadly force.
Okay. Yeah, I like that answer. You know, the affirmative is going to try and talk about consequences. So seemingly, if you talk about only the means matter, it would make the affirmative arguments irrelevant. Yeah, definitely. So, Jared, can you explain to me why running a dance logical standard on the negative strategic?
Because you, like, the affirmative wouldn't be able to compare the consequences because you're looking at, like, the means to an end.
So why wouldn't the affirmative be able to compare consequences?
Because you value mean more. Like,
So why does that mean that consequences don't matter?
because, like, it's not proportional to like, each side.
What do you mean?
Like, the, like, abuser, like, him using repeated domestic violence doesn't allow for the deadly force to be a reciprocal action done by the abuser. Because, like, we're looking towards a means to an end, not, like, overall benefits for society.
Okay. So we're looking for a means to an end. That's true. What does this have to do with reciprocity?
Like, I mean, when I'm in my, I'm using like that instead of like, my standard would be preservation of human life and how like repeated domestic violence is like nobody is dying because the abused is like living no matter what. But, like the reciprocal action that the abused takes and using deadly force to kill doesn't make it like fair. Because there would be like loss of life.
Okay. So that's one type of way to talk about sort of like a deontology thing. You know, there's a rule, we have to always be fair when you're breaking it. But let's focus on the ends themselves argument. So, can anyone talk through this why I'm strategic to have the deontological standard when you're dealing with it? Yeah.
Well, because the consequences wouldn't be moral anymore, because the way you got to the consequences wasn't moral.
So when you say the consequences wouldn't be moral, what do you mean?
Like, the situation that comes out of you killing the user. You wouldn't have reached it in a moral way.
Okay, so are the consequences relevant?
No, they're not relevant in deontology.
Yeah. So if you have a deontological standard, and the consequences that the act is talking about, the state of affairs that will result from the abused killing their abuser is completely irrelevant. The only relevant moral fact is that the abused is killing someone.
Yeah, so the after-rent only wants that half. The victim receives all these benefits of killing the abuser. The deontologist is like, yeah, you have these moral consequences, but they're no longer moral because of the way you got there. So that's a bit about why it might be beneficial to run deontology in certain positions and certain resolutions. It lets you ignore a lot of arguments the affirmative can make. So that's so strategic, it's probably helpful to be able to warrant that type of standard. So now we're going to talk about different ways to justify deontology.
Yeah, briefly before we segue into this, this just as a disclaimer, the types of justifications that we're giving you right now are certainly not an exhaustive list. These are just the tip of the iceberg. There have been, thousands and thousands of pages written about this deontology utility debate, and there's the literature is incredibly rich. So don't come away with this thinking that all of a sudden you've learned everything about utility and deontology. This is very much just sort of a brief introduction. And Graham and I will email you guys out later tonight a list of possible articles that you guys might find for the research if you are so inclined.
Yeah. Another thing about the justification for deontology is that remember we broke up the utilitarian warrants into 3 sections. It's much more difficult to do that with deontological warrants because sort of like what we were talking about before, like the difficulty we had in coming up with the deontological standard form. Hence that deontology is much more complicated than utilitarianism. So utilitarianism involves some like a little bit of math equations. Just like enough people can keep themselves alive, the super secret argument. With deontology, because it seems somewhat unintuitive to say that, well, you shouldn't save more people because you have to kill someone to get there. The arguments are much more complicated, so it's more difficult to like group them into different classes. So what we're going to do is read you some arguments that philosophers have made, and we're going to break apart those arguments so you guys can understand sort of the logic behind have Dan knowledge to justify their.
Yeah, so we'll read some cards. You guys should blow them and be paying incredibly close attention to exactly how the argument unfolds. What's the first premise or the claim of the argument? How does that warrant it? What are the steps that we go through when they warrant the claim? When we're done reading, you guys should be able to tell us exactly how the argument works. What it's claiming, exactly how the warrant works, and then what's the result of the argument.
The first probably do the well. Cool. So this is an argument made by Arthur Applebaum, Applebaum.
Okay, everybody as well? Nod your head if you are. Nod your head if you aren't.
Some people not at all.
Raise your hand if you're not ready as well. Okay, Kyle, hurry up. You're not doing anything. Okay, you're ready now? Okay. Okay. This is Applebaum. Morality is possible only for beings capable of seeing themselves as one individual among others. Our lives matter to us, but we realize the lives of billions of others matter to them. Either we concede that from an impersonal point of view, no one really matters, or we recognize that the fact that each life matters to the one who is living it does matter in some way from an impersonal perspective. If one ought to matter to no one but oneself, the one cannot continue to think of oneself as a being that matters very much at all. Since we think of ourselves as beings that matter, consistency demands that we extend the same status to others. If people are not ends in themselves, then they have a lower order of worth. If persons are to matter, then morality must value not only the absence of violations of persons, but the treatment of persons as inviolable.
Alright. So, again, it's somewhat complicated arguments to stand how long the arguments tend to be. Can someone take a guess on what the first
What's the premise of Applebaum here? Yeah.
Morality is possible only for beings capable of seeing themselves as one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first step. Applebaum says morality is only possible if we see ourselves as just one individual among others. Cool. Can anyone think of the next premise? The next part of the argument? Yeah.
Everybody on the plan shares this view.
So, I think that it's not that everyone, that would be a very descriptive claim, you know? Applebaum would have had to sort of take a poll of the world and be like, well, we've concluded that every single person on the face of the earth agrees with my claim, you know? That's not the exact point. Yeah, Shane.
We value our lives just like everyone else values theirs.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone values their own life. They all think that it's sort of important. Nobody really wants to die. Cool. So what's the next premise? Someone that hasn't said anything yet. Thomas.
If we don't value the lives of other people, then we're not individuals.
Close. I like the first part. It definitely has something to do with how we view other people. Specifically, if we don't value other people. So who was on that? Yeah. Right. Cool.
If we don't value ourselves, then we don't have value to we don't matter. We matter only to ourselves, we don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So if we only value ourselves, if we only treat ourselves as valuable and pursue our own selfish interests, and then why would we expect anyone else to do something different? Everyone would just only value themselves and always pursue their own self-interest. So, what's the next part of the argument? Ashley, what's the next part of the argument?
I don't get it.
Okay, so we're going to help Ashley out. By the way, actually before we help Ashley out, let's catch Ashley out. So who thinks they can explain the entire argument up to this point? Oviedo, give it a shot.
Explain the whole argument.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to morality to be achieved, we have to see everyone as equal to ourselves, and we have to treat everyone as an ends in themselves.
Okay, so we're not quite to that last part yet. Let's start with just the premise. You can tell me the premise again. Michael, can you tell me the premise? And everyone should be writing this down. You should be writing down these steps.
Premise of what?
Of this argument. The first thing we discussed.
A person has to value themselves for them to be morality.
Almost. Yeah.
Morality is possible only for beings capable of seeing themselves as one individual.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so everyone write down the premise. Morality is only possible if people see themselves as one individual among many. And what did we decide the next step was? Shane, I think you were the one that made this jump.
Yeah, it's our lives are important to us, just like everyone else's lives are important to them.
Yeah. The next part of the argument, which you should all be writing down, is our lives are important to us, just like everyone else's lives are important to them. Then we got one more part of this argument out of the way. Ryan, you want to explain it again?
So basically, in order to be valuable, in order to matter in society, you have to recognize the second premise. Like, I guess if you only value yourself, then you're not valuable to the rest of society.
Yeah, exactly. So the third premise, which everyone should be writing down, is if you only value yourself, then how could you expect anyone else to do something different? You aren't very valuable if the only person who cares about you is you. Okay, so Ashley, now that we've caught you up, can you give us the next premise of the argument? Would it be helpful if I reread the part? Okay, I'm going to reread the argument one more time. If you didn't flow it originally, flow it now. Is everyone ready to flow? Okay. Morality is possible only for beings capable of seeing themselves as one individual among others. Our lives matter to us, but we realize the lives of billions of others matter to them. Either we concede that, from an impersonal point of view, no one really matters, or we recognize that the fact that each life matters to the one who is living it does matter, in some way, from an impersonal perspective. If one ought matter to no one but oneself, the one cannot continue to think of oneself as a being that matters very much at all. Since we think of ourselves as beings that matter, consistency demands that we extend the same status to others. If people are not ends in themselves, then they have a lower order of worth. If persons are to matter, then morality must value not only the absence of violations of persons, but the treatment of persons as inviolable. Okay, Ashley, what is the next premise of the argument?
Like each person must be like an end within themselves.
That's definitely like the conclusion. But there's another step immediately following what we just talked about how you only care about yourself and everyone else will only care about themselves.
So you have to care about other people in order for you to be worth.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think that you are a worthwhile person, if you think that you are someone who has worth, then consistency demands you extend that worth to other people, or else there's no reason for them to think you have any worth at all. So if we are, so the next premise that you should all write down is that if we are to have any worth at all, consistency demands that we extend the worth we give to ourselves to every other human. Or else there would be no reason for them to view us as worthwhile. And we would not have that. Okay, so what is the last part of this argument? So what is this in the it's because it's
Because you should be consistent about caring about your work. Nobody's like
is what?
inviolable.
So inviolable means can't be violated. So it would be no one's life is violable, right? So almost, but I think there is some key rhetoric that's missing here. So what was your name? Carlos. Can you say it louder what you said to me?
Because we have to be consistent about valuing ourselves and others. Everybody's life is inviolable.
Green shirt is back. Do you hear what this said?
Kyle.
Yes,
Carlos, tell Kyle exactly what you said.
I was helping with plugging.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
It's
Okay,
actually
was Kyle
true.
actually helping?
Yes, he was.
Well, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Kyle, but you still need to listen to Carlos. Carlos. Tell Kyle what he says.
Because we have to be consistent between valuing ourselves and valuing others. Because we value ourselves, we have to be consistent and value others. Therefore, nobody's life is violent.
Okay, so I think that Carlos' answer almost gets there, but is missing some key rhetoric. So Kyle, when you value yourself, how do you value yourself? Do you value yourself as a means to someone else's end? Like, do you value yourself as someone who's only worth helping other people get to their own objectives? Or do you value yourself as someone who can set goals for yourself? Yeah, someone who can set goals for yourself. Hopefully all of you guys think of yourselves as an end in yourselves, right? You all don't exist just to serve someone else. You exist to come up with your own goals, your own things that you want to do. And you think that you are worth people respecting those wishes and allowing you to do those things that you want to do, right? So you value yourself as an end in yourself. So when Carlos says that we all have worth, we all value ourselves, we have to extend that value to everyone else. What kind of value are we talking about? Is it just we value ourselves as a means to an end, so everyone else can be a means to an end? Yeah, exactly. We value ourselves as an end in ourselves. And so if we are to be consistent, we have to extend that value to everyone. Every single human has to be an end in themselves. So, who wants to re-articulate Carlos's conclusion of the argument with an inclusion of this analysis of being an end in yourself? Kyle does. Michael says Kyle does.
What?
Michael says you want to re-articulate the argument.
I don't.
You don't? Do you think Michael should?
Yeah, I think Michael should.
Okay, give it a shot.
Maybe Jared.
I think Michael should give it a shot first. Okay, so try and re-articulate Carlos's answer, except using the rhetoric of being an end in yourself.
So Carlos said, hold on, I'm trying to go over this.
Carlos have to tell you?
I appreciate it. I don't know what you say.
Carlos, say what you say one more time.
Can I reiterate myself?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll let you finish. Yes, okay. Everyone should be listening. So poor Carlos had to say it like 4 times.
If we're to value ourselves as ends in ourselves, then we should be, or we have to be consistent and value other people as ends in themselves.
And so,
for this reason, the lives of, or the human worth of everyone is invaluable.
yes, exactly. Okay, this is a really, really great way to conclude the argument. So, everyone should write the last part of this argument down. It says we value ourselves as an end in ourselves. In order to be consistent, we have to extend that same amount of worth to everyone. Which is to say, we have to value everyone as an end in themselves. And because everyone is an end in themselves, their moral worth is inviolable. This is a really key word. Does someone have an idea of what inviolable means? How about purple shirt right here?
It cannot be violated.
Yeah,
It can't be violated.
exactly. It can't be violated. Inviolable means that it can't be violated. Write this down. That's to say that no matter how good a consequence could arise from violating someone's moral worth, you can't do it without being moral, or without committing a moral violation. People are inviolable. Okay, so now that you all have written down every single step of this argument, can someone explain to me the whole,
Wait. Devin knows how to fix this.
Yeah, it's just a button over there.
Yeah.
Not again. Hey, yeah, this can be a practice in avoiding distractions during rounds. So, who can explain to me the entire argument of the card? Yeah, I'm gonna go for it. Everyone listen.
Applebaum starts off with the premise that morality is only possible if people see their lives.
Can you be louder because this awful beeping?
Okay. Applebaum's arguments start off with the premise that morality is only possible if people see their lives as one individual among many. And his second argument is that our lives are important to us just as other people's lives are important to them. And if you value yourself.
Okay, now that's better. Let's just do okay, the distraction is gone. Everyone, bring back your attention here. Okay, so go for it.
Applebaum's arguments start off with the premise that morality is only possible if people see their lives as one individual among many. And our lives are important to us just as other people's lives are important to them. And then third, if you only value yourself, then how can you expect others to do any different? You're not very valuable if the only person who cares about you is you. Fourth, if you believe you have worth, consistency demands that you extend that same worth to every other human, or else there is no reason for others to view you as worthwhile. And fifth, since we value ourselves as an end in ourselves, in order to be consistent, we have to value everyone else as ends in themselves, thus making all humans inviolable, which means that you cannot violate people and still be moral.
Yeah, I don't remember around that song. Yeah, you guys did a really good job with this. I mean, I was a lot better than I was expecting. You guys did great. I think you guys really investigated for pretty well. Okay, cool. So that is one of a number of, an infinite amount of justification for deontology. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. So yeah, we're going to have another example. Do you have a question?
Oh, we have another example.
What?
What are we doing right now? What are we doing right now?
Oh, we're going to go through another example.
Okay.
Yeah. So same thing, different argument.
So this next argument is by a German philosopher named Immanuel Kant, K-A-N-T. He's one of like the first deontologists. If I hear someone say it, someone calls someone a Kantian, that means I'm like this guy, they're probably deontologists.
A what? What was that called?
A what?
A Kantian.
Someone who likes cans.
That is.
Con.
Oh, that's all.
Yeah, it's con. And con is someone who likes con. So next to your bad friend is called con community.
Oh my god.
Maybe.
So, they will. Alright. So, you guys probably ready to flow.
Yeah, everybody ready to flow?
Already ahead of you.
Immanuel Kant writes, man exists as an end in himself, not merely a means to be arbitrarily used, but must always be regarded as an end. All objects of the inclinations only have conditional worth, or if the wants founded upon them did not exist, their object would be without value. Rational beings, therefore, are objective ends which no other can be substituted, otherwise nothing would ever possess absolute worth. If all worth were contingent, there would be no supreme principle of practical reason. And
You read it again.
alright, let's read it one more time.
Thank you.
Well, Kant writes, man exists as an end in himself, not merely to be arbitrarily used, but must always be regarded as an end. All objects of the inclinations only have conditional worth, where if the wants founded upon them did not exist, and their object would be without value. Rational beings, therefore, are objective ends which no other can be substituted, for otherwise nothing would ever possess absolute worth. All worth were contingent, there would be no supreme principle of practical reason. Okay. Yeah, this guy's known for being not the clearest phrase. Yeah, the last sentence is, if all words were contingent, there would be no supreme principle of practical reason. So, does someone want to take, so first, I think, before we get into like premise 1, 2, and 3, let's try to define some of these words. So, what is it? So he says, he talks a lot about conditional and unconditional worth. What do you think conditional worth is?
Your work. So,
But what do you think?
she can go.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that if you have conditional work, then you only have work if you're being used, and then if you have unconditional work, then you have work all the time.
Yeah. There is conditional work. There are conditions placed upon when you actually have work or not. Unconditional work, it means that you are always valuable, so there are no conditions placed upon it. So we talked, there's a phrase earlier we talked about that is sort of synonymous with unconditional worth. Can someone tell me what it is? How about in the gray shirt? Do you know what might be like a similar phrase to unconditional worth?
No matter what. You have
Yes, that's a good definition of unconditional worth. But there's a phrase we used before. Not uses as well. That is sort of synonymous with that.
State of affairs.
That's where
That is for you. Yeah, state of affairs is what do you tell parents?
So is unconditional work,
Yeah, unconditional worth is you're an end in yourself. You're always valuable. So what does Kant say about objects? What kind of worth do objects have? Like this chair.
Nothing compared to humans.
Yeah, nothing compared to humans, which means that they have conditional worth. Because the only reason this chair is valuable is like I want to sit on it. If I want like to make a fire, this plastic chair is not really going to help me at all. So there are conditions placed upon the worth of this chair. So who is it that gives value to this chair? Yeah. Yeah. Does that mean that you could give value to this chair?
No.
Alright, so what is it about humans then that means that we can give value to this chair?
we're rational, and all rational beings can.
Yeah, so that's the claim he's going to be making. So why is there a rationality that lets us give value to objects? Yeah.
Because we recognize them?
So is it just like I see this chair? That's nothing.
I really answer that question.
Okay, I think you're on the right track.
That we recognize the importance of some objects.
Yeah, we recognize the importance of some objects. Remember before, what was the source of value for dance?
Autonomy.
Yeah, autonomy. So it's autonomy, our ability to make a decision. When we're making a decision though, we make a decision to try and achieve a goal. Because we have a rational will, we can foresee some future, like result or something, and try and get there. So I can give value to this chair because I'm a rational being. And I can say, oh, rationally, my legs are tired, so I want to sit down. Here's this chair, let me use it as a mere means to achieve that goal. Would it call it to say that using a chair as a mere means is wrong?
No.
Alright, now you shook your heads. So why is the answer that?
Because the chair is an object.
Yeah, chair is an object. It simply is an object of conditional worth. But Kant says that rational beings are objective ends to which no other can be substituted. So, what would happen if rational beings only had conditional worth?
We could use them as a means to achieve something else.
Yeah, we could use them as a means. What would have unconditional worth then if rational beings did not have it?
A chair.
A chair would become unconditionally valuable?
Irrational means.
Hmm?
Irrational people.
So let's say, in the example, let's say Patrick shoots me in the face and treats me as a mere means. Do chairs suddenly have infinite worth then?
Oh, yes. I'm serious.
Yes.
No, they don't.
I would disagree with that. Because it seems like just treating one thing as an object doesn't mean that other objects suddenly receive unconditional worth, right? Because you're not changing your relation to the chair. You see, the answer to this is sort of, let's unpack this last sentence. So he says that rational beings are objective ends which no one can be substituted, for otherwise nothing would ever possess absolute worth. All worth were contingent between a supreme principle of practical reason. So, if rational beings only had conditional worth, would there be anything that is unconditional value?
No.
No, because everything would merely be an object. This chair, Catherine, itself, this window, that obnoxious noise. Those would all be conditionally valuable upon what we want them to do. So, the conclusion is then that human worth is viable. If deontology is not true, could we have an ethical system that produces obligations that are always viable?
No.
No. Why?
That was my answer.
Because nobody is rational enough to make it.
So rationality would still exist though if we didn't respect it, right? So like I might disrespect Patrick's rationality by only saving him from that dump truck because I wanted him to help me with this lecture. That could still disrespect his rationality, but it doesn't prevent Patrick from being irrational. Does that distinction make sense?
Yes.
So, Kai, you said that Michael stole your answer.
Yeah.
Do you want to try a different explanation for that answer?
That was my explanation.
I wasn't here.
No,
Alright.
it was similar to my explanation.
Yeah. Well, Michael's answer was getting pretty close. So you want to try giving the same what your answer?
Well, it was similar. Like, it was a lot worse than that. It was similar. It was kind of a simple explanation.
What was his explanation?
So how do you know your answer was similar? I don't know. Does someone want to try and help out? Well, do you want to give it a shot?
Can you rephrase the question?
So, on this last sentence, talks about what happens if rational beings are treated merely as a means. And so the question is, could we have a moral system that produces obligations, something that we must always do? You gotta say no. So why is the answer no? Why is it that we treat rational beings as mere means, though we do not have a system of obligations?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because at that point, they wouldn't like have any unconditional value because they are means to the end and not from themselves.
So what do you mean by that?
As in like rational being rational beings then become means to the end, not the ends themselves. So therefore they wouldn't have any unconditional worth. And so yeah.
Yeah, so rational beings would have only conditional worth, and objects would only have conditional worth. So there would be nothing that had unconditional worth. And an obligation is something we must always do, i.e., it is unconditionally binding. So if I say you have moral obligation to not kill, that does mean that, like, if it's Tuesday, you can shoot someone in the face. That would be ridiculous. Because that obligation is unconditional. You must always never kill people. So similarly, Kant's conclusion is that deontology would be justified because the human worth is not inviolable. If you can harm one person to save others, then those more people you are saving still only have that conditional worth. So it might not even be the case that we should kill one to save more, because if the one person you save is going to like finally cure for cancer, it'd be much more valuable to keep them alive and let everyone else die. What that means is that we can never have such a moral obligation in terms of that framework, because nothing will ever be always binding. So, we're approaching the end of the lecture. So I just want to try to really quickly explain Kant's argument in its entirety.
Sam, you want to give it a shot? Okay. So everybody listen to Sam. Kyle, start off with your photos.
Okay, so Hans starts out with the premise that man exists as an end in himself unconditionally, right? The second claim or premise is that rational beings are objective ends, which separates these rational beings from objects which do not have unconditional value and are not objective ends. The third premise is that all objects only have conditional worth because of values placed upon them. So like, I only value water because water keeps me alive. Yeah. And finally, if all worth was contingent, there would be no worth in practical reason. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put that a little bit simpler.
Yeah. Just the last.
If all worth was like conditional on what? On whether it has value in the use of that object, then there would be no worth in morality because there's no separation between humans, or there would be no rational beings because humans have conditional worth.
So I really like your answer, but I think there's one word missing from it. You said, so rational beings are treated like objects, and we can use them as a mere means, then there would be no worth in morality. What kind of worth would morality like?
Conditional.
Unconditional.
Unconditional. Yeah. So that's the entirety of Kant's argument. That rational beings are objective ends, so we have to always value them. Rational beings who give value to objects. If rational beings had no value, then humans could never have a moral obligation because nothing is always valuable. Everything is contingent on value.
Yeah, everybody can stand here. Cool.
Do you have a question?
I have an off-topic question. Do you put your pants up there, or do they come like
Yeah, that's what I was
They look pants I own, so.
Okay.
Did you dance or something?
I'm trying to get them fixed and work, but we can talk about that later.
Did you
Anyway.
dance or something? Is that why?
I was the second one.
Sam?
Which one?
I think he can dance.
Rational beings are objective ends, which separates these rational beings with unconditional worth and separates them from objects which have conditional words based on their value that we put them on.
Is there any final questions? Sure.
Okay, so that can be the unofficial title.
What?
But anyways, so now that we have walked through some ways to justify ontology, hopefully you guys feel a little bit more comfortable or familiar with the actual in-depth justification for utility in ontology. Come on, guys, we got like 2 minutes left. So yeah, so we hope that you guys learn at least. We hope you guys learn at least a little bit about the general ethical theories of utility and deontology, as well as the ways they function in debate rounds, and a couple ways how you can justify it. So yeah, thank you guys. Thanks guys. See you all.